What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. Today, joined by my co-hosts, Will Cohen and Colin Alcabes. Today, we're going to be talking about the upcoming New York Rangers season, who's going to make the roster, who's not. Today, specifically, talking about Brennan Othmann and Gabe Perreault, the Rangers' top two prospects. I think both of them have a pretty good chance of making the lineup, at least at some point in the season. But we're going to get into it, break it all down, and all the good stuff. So we're going to get right onto that. But before we do, make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss notification. Be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers. But we need to address something first. Will, you haven't been here. You've been eating pizza. You've been working. How you been? You're muted.
Sorry, my mic. The cord is jiggled. Like it'll.
I'm gonna leave that in too. I hope you know that.
That's all right. I've eaten 7 large pizzas yesterday. 8 1-liter bottles of Pepsi, and I will give the pizza a 7 because I ate 7 of them out of 10.
That's a light snack for you. I'm impressed.
Very light snack. And then I had 5 Big Macs after that because I wasn't full. With that's 8 medium Cokes.
You changed Pepsi to Coke now.
Yeah. McDonald's doesn't sell Pepsi, so I had to switch to Coke. So yeah.
Any new viewers to the channel are gonna have no idea what we're referencing, but they have to just go back a couple episodes when Will decided to eat pizza in the middle of a recording.
I think the second to last time I was on, that's when I ate pizza. I had pizza that episode.
But while you've been gone, I've had pizza in your absence a couple times as well. So
Colin did eat Domino's. But anyways, we got stuff to talk about. Let's get moving. Colin, I'm not even gonna ask you how you're doing. I know you're doing good. But what I will ask you is about Brennan Othmann and Gabe Perreault. Do you see either of these guys making the opening night roster, at least, in your opinion?
I definitely do. I think you don't make a move like trading Chris Kreider if you don't have an option or a backup plan. And I think that plan is to either promote one of these guys they like what they see from them in training camp and in the preseason, or if not, then you move up somebody a little bit lower on the depth chart and you give them a spot in a bottom 6 role. Both players are extremely intriguing. Both have very high potential, or once considered cornerstone prospects for this franchise, and they've also have the potential to be. One is a little bit younger than the other, obviously, and I think he has the more upside. I think Gabe Perreault definitely has the advantage or the step up, but that's just me. I know Othmann, I believe he got injured last year. He can play a handful of NHL games as well, but I think Perreault is the more complete player. But I mean, only time will tell. I definitely think that there is an option, a viable path for both of these guys to make the roster, but it does come down to who performs at training camp and during the preseason, and if the coaches like what they see, and if Mike Sullivan thinks this is a guy that can be useful to our team night in and night out, and not a detriment to any of the lines.
I will say, before I let Will give his opinion, my only concern is just what this roster currently looks like. 2 great players have the potential to become elite NHL players, both of them, I think, in my opinion. But we've seen the problem in the past with prospects like Lafreniere, Kakko, Hedl, where they just keep getting buried in the bottom 6. And, before we recorded, looking online, trying to see what the projected lines would look like. Daily Faceoff currently has Gabe Perreault in the lineup, but it's on a 3rd-line role with Parsonen and Brodzinski. And that doesn't really sit right to me. I like these guys. We don't want to bury them in the bottom 6. I kind of want to see them be in a top 6 role. But how are you going to do that when you have guys such as Panarin, Zibanejad, Cooley, Miller? They're taking up all those roles, So it's kind of tough to fit them in. I really want to see them play this season, and I'm sure we will, given, there's bound to be an injury, bound to be some trades or scratches. We're going to see them at some point. But if we're going to give them a full-time role in the lineup, I would prefer to see it be a top 6 role. So it is tough. The question is, are they going to make the roster? And I think, yes, they can and they should, but only if the right circumstances there. I really just don't want to see Brennan Othmann be a 4th-line player playing with Matt Rempe, scoring 0 points, and then his development is entirely ruined, like a couple of other players we've seen in recent Rangers past. So to me, it's tough. I don't know. I'll probably flip-flop on it the more we talk about it, but that's just my personal take. Will, I'll let you think. Othmann, Perreault, are they making it? What do you see happening?
I think there's two options for this. I think if if Mike Sullivan if Mike Sullivan and the Rangers want to give Zibanejad another chance to center a line, then I think both of them would be in the lineup. And I'd have to think Othmann would be on the third line and Perreault would be on the second line or on a line with Cooley and Miller. But that's if the Rangers are confident that they want to give one more shot to Zibanejad centering his own line, which I think they would, because I think, a center depth of Trocheck and Miller and then Zibanejad on paper looks very good. And then that would obviously open up two spots, because in a spot in the top six for Gabe Perreault, if Mike Sullivan is, wants to give him that run, and then a spot on the third line for Brennan Othmann. Now, if the Rangers don't want to have Zibanejad center his own line, obviously there's only one spot, and I would think that goes to Brennan Othmann on the third line, because I think he has more NHL experience than Gabe Perreault, and he would fit better on a third line than Perreault's skill set, because I think, like you said, both of you guys have said, Perreault really does need he fits. He's a second line player. He's going to be a second line player. You need to put him on a second line where he can show that you want to see what he can do with higher end talent. And obviously you want to get him comfortable with guys. And I think he would fit on a line with Cooley and Miller, who are defensively sound, and Perreault showed his defensive ability in
He's been working on it,
but he's more of an offensive.
It was a weak point.
Yes, exactly. So I think if the Rangers go the first route where Zibanejad does center a line, both of them will be up.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, then I think it would be pretty beneficial for Perreault to start the year in the AHL and just get a little, get comfortable with the speed of the NHL game. I know it's not the NHL, but it's it's closer than college, obviously.
Closest you're gonna get.
Exactly. It's the closest you're going to get. And I know that they burned a year off his ELC. And do you really want to waste a year of that with him in the AHL? I mean, not really, but it would be beneficial for him if there's no spot, then him just being up, maybe playing third line minutes. I don't know if he'd play over Othmann on that third line, and then or have him sit in the press box. I mean, that's just worthless for a guy that's 19 years old, 19, 20 years old. So that's my two thoughts, is if Zibanejad centers a line, both of them will be up. If he doesn't and he's a winger, then Othmann takes that spot on the third line. Perreault is down in the AHL.
Yeah. I will say the one thing that you mentioned is the arrival of Coach Sullivan. Now, obviously, we're all familiar with Mike Sullivan. He's won a couple Stanley Cups. Colin, we talked about this a little bit last episode when we recorded. And obviously, I'm not a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. I haven't studied their team ever since Mike Sullivan took over there. But from what I've read and seen online from people saying, Sullivan is the type of coach that likes to prioritize his veterans, and he doesn't really like to put a lot of pressure on the young guys to get the job done. He kind of lets them develop, do their own thing. And then once they're older, once they're fully developed, that's when they make the jump over. So I don't know if that's going to be the case here with the Rangers, but from what I've seen, in my opinion, if the choice came down between giving a big opportunity to a guy like Othmann or Perreault compared to giving Zibanejad another top six spot, I feel like he would lean towards Zibanejad, which then kind of shuts the door on giving that top six opportunity to the young guys. So I don't know. I mean, we can't see into the future. I don't know how Mike Sullivan is going to approach this season and what he plans to do with his prospects and the veterans. That's one of those things we kind of just got to wait and see what his plan is. But to me, I don't know if they get in. I think they should. I really want to see both of them be. I mean, Will, you're right. I think Othmann would be better for the third line than Perreault. That's true. I really just don't want to see Perreault on the third or fourth line. He needs to be line 1 or 2. And like I said, looking at daily faceoff, that's usually a pretty accurate source about what the lines are looking like. It changes pretty much the hour that a lineup change has been announced. Says he's going to be on the third line. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But I think we're all in agreement that both of them should be given an opportunity. Kind of just depends on what those lines are going to look like. Am I right?
Yeah, pretty much sums it up.
Unless anyone had any closing thoughts, I think we've answered the question of this episode.
That's it. The only thing I want to say is I wouldn't be entirely opposed to the idea of a kid line for a little bit.
That would be fun.
Just see how it went to put I'm going back to the original kid line. To put Perreault and then maybe either Parson or Brodzinski at the center, and then Othmann on the other side, and just see how that goes. I think getting NHL experience for the both of them will benefit them. I agree that they should be getting top 6 roles, and it's going to be difficult to do that while trying to remain competitive. You brought in a coach to win now. You have a roster that's still built to win now. I know they didn't do that last year, but 2 years ago we were close, and it hasn't really changed a whole lot. Like, obviously, we've lost some key contributors from those teams like Kreider and whatnot, but they're backfilling with guys like JT Miller who weren't there and players like that. So it's like this team is still built to compete. They're still expecting to make a playoff run next year. So it's hard to then try to put players who haven't played in the league in top 6 roles and teach them the ways of the game at the NHL level. Not that I don't think that they're both extremely coachable, and I also do like that we have the 2 assistant coaches. It's Quinn and Saka, right? I know it's Quinn. I forget the other one.
I know it's Quinn.
I know it's Quinn too. Yeah, that's bad.
We'll have half of it, but he was a big part. I know Rangers fans aren't really too fond of him, but he was a big contributor in unlocking, Mika and Buchnevich and really getting Kreider to kind of hit his stride. And like a lot of players took that next step under him, and maybe not in a coaching role, but in an assistant coaching role, he can kind of work with those players on the side while Sullivan takes the reins on the whole team. You'll have Quinn working with these younger players saying, all right, this is what you have to do here and this is what you have to do there, in more of a mentorship role there too. So, I think that would be beneficial to have that kind of coaching. Plus, Othmann has been in the AHL for a little bit, and I think he played well his first year, but not up to his normal standards. Last year, he took a big step, got injured, came back. I think he was an all-star in the AHL, and then ended up getting called up to the NHL with 2 points in 22 games in the NHL. But I do think you're right. He has that snarl and that bite to definitely play on that third line. And I'm not opposed to putting Perreault on a third line, and maybe somehow he outplays Cooley. And Cooley, who we know has that snarl and has played on the third line and succeeded, him and Othmann could be good on the line, and you'd move Perreault up to a line with, as you said before, with Miller and Zibanejad, if that's something that you're liking, or as you said, Will, if you do decide to center Zibanejad, which I hadn't even thought of, if Mike Sullivan can kind of get that defensive side and that, because there's a point where Zibanejad was one of the better centers in the league, one of the better two-way guys. Mm-hmm. If you can get that back out of him, a line of Perreault, Miller, and Cooley, you have 2 gritty guys in Miller and Cooley, and Perreault is the skill guy on that line. That has the makings of a good line too. So there's a bunch of different options they can go. Luckily, a lot of the roster as it has been is very fluid. Nobody's penciled into anywhere where they can't be moved. That is kind of what happens when you have a lot of high-end talent, I think, is you're able to kind of mix and match and see what you like and kind of play with the combinations. And I do think that there was games last year where Othmann looked like the best player on the ice, and Laviolette didn't let him go out for the third. So, they both have such high ceilings. It's just a matter of whether they can be reached and where I think they are best suited to play on this team at this time.
Yeah, like we said, it's all a waiting game. We'll see what Sullivan decides to do. It's really up to him. But I'm excited. I really hope we get to see both of these young players play to at least some extent this season, whether it's just for a couple games to start, maybe a couple games later towards the deadline, trade happens, injury happens, who knows? We'll just have to wait and see, and we'll make sure to let everyone know our thoughts on their play if and when they do get that call up to the NHL. But that about wraps up today's episode of Fireside Rangers. If you guys did enjoy, please make sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell so you miss notification. As always, leave those thoughts down in that comment section. And be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers. But have a good one. And let's go Rangers.